Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. My name is Tyler Hakes. I run the content marketing agency Optimist, as well as the content marketing and SEO community, Top of the Funnel. I'm super excited to be with you today and with our guest, Tory Gray from Gray.co. She's going to be talking about user-generated content. So obviously, there have been many changes happening in the world of content marketing and SEO over the last year. But one of the things that I think has gotten sort of lost in the shuffle is some of these other strategies, other ways that we can approach content marketing and SEO that aren't just, nose to the grindstone, cranking out content or using AI to generate a billion new articles. One of those strategies that I think is often overlooked by companies is user generated content. So working with your communities, your fans, your customers to generate and use content that can help you actually grow your business, improve social proof, and also sort of grow your authority around the topics that your business cares about. So Tori is going to be unpacking examples of UGC strategies, how she's seen this play out in the wild, and what kind of results you can expect. So I'm super excited to dive in with her. Before we get started, I do have a few requests, as always. First and foremost, say hello to us in the chat. Let us know who's here so we can see who is joining us. Second, if you would be so kind, please like this video. It's going to help other folks find us, find our content, join our community, and learn together with us. Number three, if you have not already, subscribe here on YouTube. We host at least once a month. We have a live session workshop brought to you by some of the super absolute smartest people in content marketing and SEO, talking about everything from keyword research to user generated content. So one of the great ways that you can stay up to date on the live sessions we have coming up is to subscribe. So would love to have you do that. And the third thing I will mention is if you are not already a member of Top of the Funnel, I'd like to invite you to join us. yesoptimist.com/tofu. This is a free community. It's a free Slack instance that you can join there. There's also a library of resources with over 100 articles, videos, guides, templates, tutorials, all kinds of amazing things that we host in Notion. You can join this. Again, it's 100% free and it's open for all kinds of folks. So it's a great mixture of nearly 3,000 people inside our community, including agency side folks, freelancers, in-house content marketers and SEOs. And inside the community, there are work opportunities being shared, questions being asked and answered, tips and things being shared, as well as, the latest news and articles. And it's also where we post all of our upcoming content. So all of these workshops, Q&As, all the great stuff that we have going on here on YouTube and live streaming on LinkedIn is also going to be posted here inside Top of the Funnel. So if you want to stay up to date on all of that stuff that's happening, connect with other really smart people in the industry, again, I would invite you to join us. yesoptimist.com/tofu. Would love to see you there. All right. Thank you for bearing with me through my announcements and please every single time. But with all of that said, I would love to introduce today's guest. As I mentioned, Tory Gray is the head of Gray.co, an SEO agency, and she's going to be joining us today to talk about user-generated content. Tory, hey, how's it going?
It's great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for taking the time to join us. I'm super excited. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I know so many folks are excited to learn from you in any way they can.
It's exciting to be here. It's one of my favorite topics. So yeah, we're gonna get into it.
Actually, that might be a good one. Before you dive in, tell us a little bit about how did you sort of get interested in this specific topic of user generated content?
The short answer is I lucked into it about 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago, actually. I was hired in to be an SEO product manager at a brand called Crap based in Denver, Colorado. They were already benefiting from the amazing UGC that they had set up to benefit their users, including patterns and projects largely. So patterns, so this is a brand that sold crafting education largely. So if you want to learn to knit, to sew, to crochet, to bake a cake, to do woodworking, all sorts of things, you could go to their site and learn how to do that. But they enabled patterns, which are like templates for crafters, that you could sell on their site. So users would come to the site, they could for free sign up and sell and make money off of their patterns and help out that community. And at the same time, we collected email addresses. And that was just a lovely way to accidentally stumble through this. And to really learn how to leverage the power of it and how to work through the challenges of it. And honestly, I think it's hugely underleveraged. So a bit of a spoiler here, but with the upcoming SGE, my bias is that it's going to be kind of a big deal and it's really going to help. So I'm excited to help take you through some of my long, painful learnings so they won't be so painful for everyone else.
Well, I love that because obviously just such a great example of the power of UGC as a marketing strategy and an SEO strategy, and it all sort of works together. And yeah, I can only imagine what kind of learnings we're gonna dive into today.
It's gonna be good, I promise.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in.
Very cool. All right. Well, we're here today, obviously, to talk about UGC, or user-generated content, from specifically from the lens of SEO. A little bit more about me. So, I kind of already talked to it, but if you can't tell, I'm a little bit just into UGC. It's true. I super love it. I lucked into it. I really see the power of it. And I think, again, it's really under leveraged. I think almost all the talks that I see, or all the content I see about UGC in relation to SEO, tends to be from the frame of, how do we make it less painful? How do we make it hurt the site less? And I'm not going to say that's not a challenge you need to overcome. It is, depending on how you structure it. But honestly, it can be a growth machine for your brand from a lot of different lenses. So I want to talk through that and how you can make that happen. So what we're going to be chatting through in general. I want to, well, actually first, let's talk about another thing we won't be doing. So obviously we want to talk about UGC not hurting you. We want to do that, but we're talking about the benefits here. We also want to talk about, or don't want to talk about, how to do it and fake it via AI. I'm not here to spam people. I want real, actual human experiences, and how do we, make for happy users that love and participate with your brand, your company, not faking it. And I think you're going to miss out on a lot of the richness of what it can provide for you here. So what I do want to do is talk a little bit about it. So I want to give you more examples. I want to expand your definition of what UGC is, because I think a lot of people have a framework in their head of how they define it, and they're not thinking of all of these broader examples of what it could be. And if you can't dream it, you can't see it, and you can't make it happen. I want to talk about why it matters in terms of your brand and your bottoms business line. I want to talk about when you can get it and where you can get it, and how, so the setting and the scaling up. Because not every brand can get all types of UGC all the time. So what kind of are the constraints to help you figure out if this is a good fit for you and your brand? So we want to talk about, again, UGC definitions. It's almost so pervasive, I think, that we don't really see it for what it is. That means that we're not being advocates for collecting it. We're just there, like I was to start, just dealing with the repercussions and the outcome of what's there. How do I, maximize the return on this? I think we could be doing a better job advocating for it to happen as part of the business, and improving SEO success and improving your business bottom line at the end of the day. So how do people think about it? From my experience, marketing as a whole has a very, very narrow view of what UGC is. They think of it as this Oreo cookie campaign. It is hashtags. It is on social media platforms. It is out there in the world. It's not related to your website, right? It's not really for SEO. It's a thing that brands do to get users to submit information to them on social media. If they have a bit of a broader view of it, then they might think of reviews, and how do they leverage those reviews on your website to help sell your brand, like this example from the Mountain Gazette. SEO has a broader view of what UGC is, largely thanks to Amazon, I think, because we have, cool product Q&As. That's a really great feature. So now we can add rich content to our pages, right? That old school used to be, thanks, Jess. that used to be what, blog comments in Web 1.0 world that don't really happen in the way that they used to. But the evolution of that was the customer Q&As. It might also be a branded landing page where you're collecting all that UGC that you did collect in your hashtag campaign. So you collected all these amazing video and image assets about specific products or about your brand as a whole. So you've made a page about it. So I think from the whole, a lot of SEOs think of UGC within those kind of 4 example use cases. Spoiler, it is a lot more than that. I think the most obvious example that most people get is templates. So let's look at Canva. They have templates. They're offering templates that they have created on behalf of their brand themselves, but they're also enabling users to upload and share templates, because that means they don't have to create every single template every single time. And it means all the different varieties of everything that everyone else comes up with, they can benefit from too. It's also, it's also forum discussions. Right? It's also art projects. It's also those design patterns and projects that people want to show off on arts and crafts sites. Too many tabs open here. It's also things like social media. So we think of these things as social media. This is TikTok. This is maybe a Quora Q&A, but this is ultimately all social media is. Social media is by definition user-generated content. This is a platform where people come to talk about stuff. Sometimes specific stuff, sometimes general stuff, sometimes it's themed, like in Reddit threads and forums. It comes together in a lot of different ways. It's also third-party seller listings. So it's Etsy, it's Amazon, third-party sellers. Obviously, Amazon also sells their own stuff, but they enable people to sell things. So it's also eBay. It's also things like Airbnb listings. It's also Coursera courses. There are a million, honestly, examples, and it's so much more broad than that. So I want you, I have a whole long blog post. I break down a ton more examples. So I want you to go and explore that and really brainstorm all the things that it could be. So you might be thinking, why should I care? Like, maybe those things sound really cool, but they also probably sound like a lot of work, which is not untrue. It also sounds like a lot of work from your engineering team. So it probably sounds a little bit intimidating, and I do understand that. But I think you should care, because I think the bottom line for the business is that this is, to steal a quote from older SEOs, this is real business shit that we're having happen right here. And it can help your brand grow. It can help through brand awareness. It helps social proof. So it helps you collect that information that you might use to sell. It can grow your site traffic tremendously. It can help grow partnership opportunities. So if you think of the Canva templates example, they're absolutely working with dedicated brands that want to work with them, that want the Canva association, that want to be able to show up on Canva site and showcase their design capabilities or what may have you. The link building opportunities are huge here. So again, using the Canva example, think about the links you get from the users who have submitted a template and now want to shout to the world, hey, guess what? My template was accepted on Canva. People are going to share that. I'm going to tell the world I'm good enough and great enough that Canva has decided to put me on their website, right? That becomes social proof for that user. They're excited. They want to share. And that's not even to mention users who might like a particular template and might want to share that and use that with people. So you can have multiple audiences growing your link building for you at scale. It's also content, obviously. This is also, authentic content from real live humans with their unique experiences, sharing all the little tiny ways in which it's individualized to them in ways that marketers aren't going to think of every single use case, because marketers are going to think of personas and they're going to think of types and they're going to bucket these things together and they're going to talk about your brand and your product from the lens of the use cases they can think of. but users' experiences are broader. So you might not think that, oh, this is a great dress. I'm going to talk about it in the context of this event and this event, but maybe your user went somewhere else and can talk about that experience and why it was good in this weather or that weather, or it didn't work here, but it worked perfectly here. It can help users understand why it was useful. That can help really sell this. Another example might be Yelp. If you read the Yelp reviews, sometimes you're looking for, hey, why did you give it that 3-star rating? And is it something that I care about or is it not? I've seen reviews on Yelp where people are complaining that there was an outlet. I don't care. That's not affecting my experience of the food or the service or this meal that I am enjoying out at this restaurant. So collecting that content and showing that variety of experience can just be hugely impactful. Again, I think that this could be huge for SG. So this is Google's new search generative experience. I've got a deeper breakdown here of how I think that this is connected. But in the use case where Google was announcing SGE, they used an example of this woman that is searching for a wedding dress and matching shoes for a wedding that she's going to in Miami. So she has to consider things like the temperature. How is the fabric going to deal with sweat? Is it up to date? Is it modern? Is it cool? Is it colorful? There's so much that goes into any individual product purchase, right? But again, going back to that individual user human experience, other users have those experiences and can tell you about that. And they might volunteer information about how they were at this wedding in Miami and they didn't sweat in this dress and it made it so amazing and it had these wonderful bright colors. And you wouldn't necessarily have had that context and that information on your page, on your site, if you hadn't taken the time to collect this UGC. Yeah. So I think UGC is amazing, obviously, and I think you should love it too. Okay, so if you're with me, if you're sold, if you want more and you want to think about when can I get my hands on it? Because the reality is not all brands and not all products can get massive amounts of UGC in all use cases. So these are the different ways in which I think about you might be able to get more or less of this UGC. If you have good brand affinity, if users are willing, if you have a beloved brand, users are just going to take more time for you. They care about you. They want to shout you from the rooftop. They're just going to take time because they love you as a brand. If they are buying off of a third-party seller on Amazon they've never heard of, if they are buying a set of 3 pens in that scenario, they're probably going to have less willingness to submit you a long form review with multiple fields. They're just not going to give you that much rich data. Unless you're part of one of those fun campaigns. I'm thinking of like the banana slicer. There's all those fun things on Amazon where suddenly someone gets a fun idea and leaves you fun reviews. So I actually would argue there are some fun digital PR angles on that you could promote to get good reviews in those scenarios with some good marketing. But for the most case, I just want to be clear that sometimes brand affinity matters. And if someone's buying 3 pens, they don't care enough to give you this much in-depth data, and that's okay. We can focus on it for the products that have, and the brands that have brand affinity. It also matters in terms of the relevancy and the relative importance of that product within a user's life. If we're talking about restocking pens, again, users don't care that much. If it's a wedding album and you're only getting married once and this is an album you're going to have on your living room table and you want to share it with everyone, maybe you're more willing to spend time really taking time to tell why this was special. Maybe it's an online course about a hobby that you're really passionate about. So you're willing to rave about this instructor that you loved and the functionality that helped you understand the subject and that it was so in depth, right? So it's relative to how important it is to that person. Maybe there's a person that bought a specific pen that's one of those $120 pens that's their lifetime achievement pen. Suddenly, maybe we can get some more compelling UGC. The shelf life of the product matters. So if we're talking fast fashion, it's going to be a larger challenge, right? If you're an e-commerce seller and you have all these products for sale and they're only going to see for sale until they run out of stock in 2 months, you might not have time to collect rich UGC that is going to be meaningful, right? Sometimes you have to balance quality and quantity and get the right amount. But if you have products that sell for a longer period of time, suddenly you want both. Maybe you start collecting quantity of reviews, for example, first, but then after you have reached a certain level of, we have many reviews, I want richer, better reviews, then maybe you can start asking for more information from users that they might be willing to volunteer because you're willing to take that trade-off of the quality and quantity. I'd also say incentives can help. Sometimes those are coupons. Sometimes that's special access to premium members-only content. Sometimes that's extra functionality on your site. So don't underrate that specifically. The really great example here is Pinterest. When suddenly, in exchange for bookmarking something on a website and putting together some sort of visual dream board, I'm willing to volunteer a lot of descriptive information about this particular picture that I'm pinning to my Pinterest board. Right? So this was very simple functionality that was clear to the user, like, oh, all I have to, but I have benefit here, right? I can find this thing again, either visually or by searching for it in my own profile. And the more information I put in, the better. So it's not always a monetary incentive that you need to worry about here. How do we make all this happen? To be cheesy here, we're going to start with the why. We're also going to start with the who and the what. But basically, we're going to go back to the basics and we're going to be brainstorming. This is really about, talking about if writing down, do one of those Google design sessions, write down who is your target audience, put yourself in their frame of mind, know your personas, what kinds of things are going to help them. You can do research. What kinds of content are they engaging with today? How do you identify existing user demand? So this is where your search data, you're literally looking up your keywords. What are people looking for that you can help fulfill that need? Or you can look for demand that they don't know that they need by talking to, say, sales teams and customer service teams who might know that, hey, users are really interested in this. I think it'd be cool if we did this. So a lot of times, I'd say 90+% of the time, the idea for UGC actually comes from product teams, business teams, executive teams, because they want to serve the user. So let's go back to the why, let's go back to the user and brainstorm there. And solving those needs can really help you brainstorm the right kind of UGC. You also want to consider if UGC can really answer the demand effectively. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Again, this is back to the Canva example. Canva also offers templates that they know are going to be to a certain design quality. They can put their name on this and they're proud of this. And then they're also enabling scale through other users. Other users might have quality and they might not so much. But you can clearly brand that on your site so that people can tell the difference and you're not going to take a brand hit. Another good example here is the Moz U blog. I don't think they branded it that way at this point, but it used to be a whole separate blog on their site, and it was a user contributor blog. And Moz would say right at the top, this is a user contribution. We may not agree with their viewpoints. So there's ways to make sure, you can get the best of both worlds. But at the end of the day, can UGC fill this demand? And the other thing you have to ask yourself is sometimes the UGC already exists, like in my case, and sometimes you just have to solve real SEO problems. So if your if your UGC program can scale, then that's the meat of what we're going to be talking about here today. And the scenarios in which this scales, there's 3 or 4 major types depending on how you want to bucket them here. I'm talking about UGC page elements. So whether that's text, rich media, whether it's images or videos, and you're getting those embedded to existing or new pages. Sometimes you do have a dedicated page, so that might be considered a different type. Then you have UGC pages, where think templates, think product detail pages or PDPs. Then there's collections. This is where things get really rich, of UGC. So these are PLPs, or product listing pages. These are category pages. They're clusters, right? If this is e-commerce and a piece of UGC is a product, then the collections here are the ways in which you group them together in meaningful ways. So instead of just Canva examples, these are design templates. These are Facebook templates. These are Facebook cover photo templates. These are Facebook promo cell templates. These are newsletter promo cell templates, right? All those different permutations and the ways to organize your content that can bring users in. So it's about the individual items, but it's also about how you group them and you can really leverage them. So I'm mostly talking about in the context of this information that follows, when you can create pages and when you can create collections of pages, because that's where the SEO comes into play. So some things to think about if you're running in this world. Permissions are going to be really, really critical. You need to confirm and explicitly get permission from that user. You want to publish it, you want to promote it, you want to share this for marketing purposes, and that means you need the legal permission to do so. Do you want it? Do they? You need to set your guidelines for tagging, accreditation. Also keep in mind that just because a user says they own it doesn't inherently mean they own it, right? This is the point of the takedown requests that get sent to Google. So sometimes users will submit to you content that they say they own that they don't really own. So you do need to think about the right terms and conditions to work through this. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving you legal advice, obviously, here, but I am saying go talk to a lawyer, get your executive team to make sure you have the right permissions to do what you want with those assets. You really need to think through brand perception, because to state the obvious, what is appropriate for one brand is not necessarily appropriate for another. And you're going to have to define for your brand what is appropriate for your brand and how you're going to go about enforcing those rules. The places to think about that being potentially problematic are in image use. You can see a picture of a lovely woman here. Sometimes those things can get more scandalous because users are up there uploading things. You've been on social media. Sometimes you run across things you did not intend to see. Will your brand allow that? Will they not? When they do, how do they control for young users on the platform, for example, or people that might not want to see it? You might have a brand that's more for kids, and that's maybe less appropriate by your brand definition. So think about this. So think about images. Think about your URL that you're setting. That really matters, because if you let your users set your URL, users can and will do funny things. The classic example here is Indeed, and they have a real shit jobs. There's pages where people were uploading joke jobs that are at companies that they want to point out are not that great. And suddenly your brand is associated with profanity. So think through that. Sometimes the UGC also sets your header, because if what they upload is the name of that item, that can set the header on the page. And again, your brand could be associated with things you don't necessarily want to be associated with. So we're talking profanity, we're talking nudity, we're talking politics, we're talking hate crimes, we're talking all the things you'd expect in the wonder and the breadth of the human experience, which can be interesting, right? How do you do that? Both through your policies, your permissions. You can do automated checking and filtering. So you can work with the engineering team to look for inappropriate words for your brand, to automatically scrub that out and say, no, you can't do that. You're going to need to keep that up to date, because there are always new and interesting ways to phrase inappropriate things that your brand might not like. User-driven enforcement is also a great way to do this. So at Craftsy, we did have a way for users to flag that this is a problem. This would set up a process internally where this would go to the customer service team. They could, a process to say like, no, this constitutes nudity. You can't show that here, or whatever it may be. You might also, again, going back to your policies, have a clear policy of what you do and don't allow. You can also do manual review. So the Moz U blog, they go through and read everything in detail before they're going to upload it to the site. So depending on the scale of the thing that you're looking for, how much UGC, if you have smaller scale and the more critical and longer form the content might be, you might be more willing to do manual, or you might need to be fully automated, or you might have something in the middle. And there's no right answer. There is probably a right answer for your brand based on the market opportunity of that UGC. So think through that, and also remember that it can evolve and improve over time, but think through it and what you think is appropriate. A really, really big thing to think through is enabling quality submissions. So when people talk about UGC being a problem, it's often in the context of thin content. A user wants to upload, say, a product photo, and they're going to call it 2 to 3 letters, and they're going to upload it, and maybe it's made a page on your site, and it's just this standalone image with no context about anything, and it's probably not very helpful to search engines. So you're going to want to think very thoughtfully about defining and enabling what those fields are, what you're going to require and what you're not going to require, as well as any character limitations of those fields or character maximums. So you might have an example form like this. You want to give them juicy prompts. You want to tell them that this is worth it. You want them to give them ideas of things to give to you. So in the example of the dress, you could tell them, hey, if you have an occasion, tell me what the occasion is. Was there a temperature? Was there a location? These are fields you could think through in advance and offer up. And then you have to decide what is required. And this is where, again, keep in mind that users have more or less willingness to fill out that many required fields, and how many fields you have, period. They might get overwhelmed and not want to proceed. So there's ways you can implement forms. Maybe you want to collect information all along, but let them after a certain point hop out or go on if they want to, right? Ask the most critical questions first. Only require the things you care about most. Or you could change it over time. If you have a product that's been around for a while and you've reached a quota of a number of reviews and you've got your quantity of reviews decided and you now want to start collecting more quality, maybe there's an automated flag in your admin that says, now I can start to require certain fields that I didn't before. One more thing I would actually say, jumping ahead. You can also really think through what you enable for indexation. And I think I'm actually talking about this in a little bit later, but there's, you can use, if they filled out 150 or 300 characters in a description field, maybe you choose to have that indexed and maybe you choose not to. I think that's a preview of things to come. I want you to think through automating on-page optimization. So leveraging dynamic fields, leveraging the things that this user submitted to automatically generate your schema. This is about scale, so you don't want to be doing all of this manually. I don't want to go back through every single template that everybody uploaded and then add information, right? So for your SEO title, maybe you have something that automatically generates for you, and the user is going to submit the name, and you use that to generate the title. And again, maybe you have filters so they can't use profanity or whatnot here. You could also add categories. If you've already decided about those categories in the name, you could add that in the title. You can do that in the meta description. Your inlinks across pages should keep those collection pages in mind. So you can automatically add this categorization and these, bullet points of these are the related categories to this item that maybe your user selected when they uploaded it. Then suddenly you have great internal linking and you have additional content on the page because of those words. Think through alt text. So maybe you're allowing the user to submit that and requiring that, or maybe you're building it for them and you're doing that via their description, the category that they put it in, their username on your profile, as well as your URL. One of the most important things to think through is your content groupings. So what are your landing pages? How are you grouping those things together? How are you leveraging facets and filters? So you're going back to classic e-commerce conversations about how do we handle these facets and filters and how do we group them together? And do we allow them to do that? Do we allow indexation on that? And how do we optimize those pages? So think through how that, this is about how you maximize your return and also how you don't create a bunch of facet and filter combinations that create a million URL permutations that are suddenly indexed in problematic SEO. Okay, so this is the part that I jumped ahead on. You really, really, really do want to think through indexing, especially if you're enabling users to create pages on your site. You do not want a ton of thin content, and you don't want a ton of duplicate content. To some extent, duplicate content is inevitable in terms of UGC because users will upload a different thing of the same name. I mean, you're not going to let them upload literally the same name. You're probably going to make it required to be somewhat unique, like a user ID would be unique, or the user username. Just like when you go on Twitter, like each person's username is unique. You can require that for a title as well. But some users won't share enough information, so it sort of becomes duplicate content because maybe it's mostly about a video or it's mostly about an image, and then you don't necessarily have a ton more information, so it becomes thin or duplicate by lack of differentiation. So here's where you really want to think through your classic SEO tools, your Robots Meta, your Canonical, and your Robots.txt. You can, and you really want to consider things like requiring minimums, requiring specific fields. So here we set automations around, hey, unless this user is submitting 300 characters in this field and filling in this field and filling in this field, maybe we let them submit it, but we're just not going to index it. We're just going to automatically meta robots no index unless they have filled in this juicy item. You can also do that based on, are people liking it? Are they engaging with it? If users are liking things and engaging with this in a meaningful way, that might be a signal that it's more important than you might think based on the number of words, right? The last thing to think through here is building in technically the ability to override when it needed manually. So quality is defined in more than one way, and it's not just the number of words on a page. That's an easy one to think about, and it's one that's easy to automate around. But what about the user who uploads an amazing template and maybe they only wrote 148 words in that description, but maybe they're kind of a deal and they're going to share it all over their social media. And now you have a ton of links pointed to this thing. So you probably want some sort of automated process or manual process, maybe quarterly, where you're reviewing things like, what backlinks do I have to my UGC? And where can I override and really take advantage of the ones that did get links and are driving SEO value and user value outside of, a word count on a page. You can also add flags like, hey, this user's special. They're kind of a big deal. They're special. They're famous. We're just always going to enable anything that they post. We will just trust is good and we'll put out there, right? Like you can think about all the different permutations for your brand, but do think through that and do use the tools to your advantage, and don't show things to Google that you don't want them to see because they're not quality, because it will be there too. The better you are at scaling this program, the more less quality stuff that you'll have to deal with. And users might want to go through those things, and that's great. That doesn't mean we need to spend search engine time on that, and that's okay. Not everything should be indexed. So at the end of the day, there are problems potentially here. There are things you're going to have to think through that we've discussed here, but it's content for people by people, and it needs to drive business value, or you're going to be spending a lot of money hosting a lot of information and not driving business value, and suddenly your CEO is going to be a little upset with you. So don't build crap. Don't do the classic issue that I see a little too often is people build sort of the programmatic version of UGC, where they suddenly create a bunch of different pages and they'll create their own pages and they'll have users submit stuff that nobody cares about. Maybe they'll incentivize so that users submit this content, but nobody's engaging with it and it's not meaningful and users don't care. And then Google doesn't crawl the pages and doesn't index the pages, and then it's a big flop, right? Nobody's looking for it. Nobody cares about it. Nobody's going to use it. Don't build crap and expect amazing results. That's not how the world works. Build something users care about and will benefit from, so it will benefit your business and everybody is happy. So that's my overview of UGC and the things that matter. Again, I'm Tory Gray. You can find me all these places. And gray.co is where you can find the company everywhere.
Tory, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this. I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. And before I forget, folks who are joining us on the live stream, please pop your questions in the chat here for Tory. Maybe anything that you're thinking about in terms of UGC or anything that she covered that you'd like her to touch on more. I'm sort of struck by the intersection between sort of UGC and like a product or like a programmatic SEO play, like sort of you mentioned, right? I think that's another area where a lot of folks are sort of missing huge opportunities, right? Like baking sort of SEO into your product in some meaningful way where user profiles are public or people are able to like share information that gets indexed later on. How do you see those two things sort of working together?
Wait, I apologize. Can you say that again?
I was just curious, do you see a lot of overlap between sort of like a product?
Oh, the programmatic.
SEO, yeah, or like a programmatic.
Yes.
And like generating content.
Sorry, I lost the thread there. Yes, because at the end of the day, UGC is programmatic. It's just who's creating the content. Users are submitting it probably through some form on your website, and it's being ingested into a database, and that database is being used to automatically build your pages. So programmatic SEO can also be content generated by your own company, but it is the same thing, and it's got all the exact same problems, to your point, that programmatic does, which is exactly why we're talking through these same things. Like, is it quality and does it matter? And frankly, even more so because you're not inherently controlling the quality of what's coming in without a lot of manual processing.
Yeah, I think that's such a good reminder. Thanks for touching on that, because I think that's a lot of people I feel like tend to swing one way or the other. Like they're either on the no end of the spectrum where they're like, that seems like way too much work and I'm not going to try it at all, or they're like, yeah, just open the floodgates and let's index a million pages of like poor
and it
poor
needs to be in the middle a little. It is work, but I mean, is it work if suddenly you have 700,000 new sessions and you're swimming in links because they're coming to you? Like, it's a good problem to have. And if you're working with a good engineering team, and in these kinds of scenarios you really do need to be, you are building automations and you're getting better over time. You're improving what you require. It's not a set it and forget it. And if you are, you're doing it wrong, and you're going to have a thin content problem. And it is neither a never do it, because then I can't benefit from it, because then other companies will come along and do it. Then Canva's going to come along and take all the design templates, and it's too late for you.
Right. And that's another good reminder too, I think, is that this is sort of a different strategy, and it's going to require a different skill set than sort of a traditional hey, we're going to write a bunch of blog posts and try to rank for keywords kind of strategy. And so as you're implementing something like this, you're going to have to take that step back. You're going to have to put on take a macro view, as you sort of touched on throughout this, right? Like how are people going to abuse this? How are we going to moderate this? How are we going to maintain over time? Which is a totally different, again, set of problems and skills.
But it's also going to drive content ideas. Like suddenly you say, hey, a bunch of people are submitting stuff around here. I'm not covering that content at all. That's juicy. People are engaging with it. Suddenly you have things to share on social media. So you don't have to create every single new point yourself, and every single new post. Like, that means less work for your company.
Right.
It's juicy, I'm telling you.
For sure. Cool. Well, we got a couple of comments coming into the chat, and just get a reminder, if you're still joining us on the live stream, please feel free to pop your questions or comments in for Tory. So Royce didn't really have a question here, but he mentioned EEAT, which is another hot topic, of course, this year. And so first of all, shout out to Royce, and again, thank you very much, Tory, for your tips today. Can you talk a little bit about how EEAT sort of factors into this strategy?
Yeah, I mean, there's certain points of this. Trustworthiness, right? The final T in EEAT. Users are engaging with you. Users like you enough to come back time and time again and upload their content and participate with you. Other users like you. Other users will engage with you. There's another question coming, and we'll talk about influencers because that's a fun one. But suddenly you have that association. So these influencers are willing to work with you. Perhaps brands are willing to work with you. So because you're able to grow your user base, because people are engaging with you, you're getting those emails. P.S. You're going to need their legal permissions. You're going to need to collect their email address in order for them to submit this content to you. Suddenly you can email market to them. Like it really grows your other channels. But that many users engage with you. Hopefully they have a delightful experience and then they talk about it. That can mean, and that did mean at Craftsy, that we could leverage that power into amazing partnerships. We worked with Disney. We worked with King Arthur Flour. We had users that loved us, that engaged with us. We had community love. We could show that easily in a sales conversation, and suddenly we're leveraging that into, hey, guess what? You do want to work with us because we can sell things for you and we can make you money because we have users that are passionate and engaged and care and are willing to spend money. So come work with us. So perhaps not all the different sections of EAT, but I think there's a few that it really, really nails, and it can show. It can show to your users and to your partners.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that, some of the social signals and some of that stuff that you might get, as you said, people submit stuff and then they share it on their own channels and that kind of stuff that all sort of helps play into that as well. So
there is a reason Google is showing so much Reddit content these days. Google, maybe, and people argue that they're overdoing it right now, and perhaps they are, but there is a reason. People are a little sick of AI perhaps right now, and there's a pushback, and maybe it's a pendulum swing, but I'm very hopeful that it means we'll get lots more very specific user insight from real users. Google likes it, so leverage that.
I was gonna say, what was the quote from Danny at Brighton last week? Was it? He said something like, Google cares about users. If you care about the algorithm, you're already behind. But if you care about the users, then you're already ahead. Something along those lines. Yeah, spot on. Anyway,
so let the users do the talking for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, users are obviously going to share content that they think is valuable, which is in and of itself a reflection of what users think is valuable.
Yes.
Cool. So Alex had a question, as you sort of foretold there, about influencer campaigns. So how would you layer UGC with influencer campaigns?
Great question. So I think influencers, for one, like trying to get them to be people who submit on your site. You might help them along. So the bigger the influencer, the more you might have to do handholding for them. But I think especially with launching new UGC campaigns, if you can collect this information. So in the world of Craftsy, this was some of the instructors. These are quilting celebrities, and we want them to sell their patterns. So they can give us their patterns and we can describe it and we'll put it in the database. We'll help create their profile and we'll put it up, right? And so suddenly people see people they admire putting things up on this platform. They're going to participate in ways. That is a sign of trust. So if you can get them to participate with you in that way, you can be a place for them to sell things. So we didn't take a cut or a commission on those pattern sales. And that was a way to say, hey, instead of selling those patterns on Etsy, where Etsy's going to take however much off the top, you can do it with us. So then the influencers wanted to work with us. And that was a reason, a place they could make more money. So we could pull them to us. Once we had a few, we could build on more. More and more people want to work with us. So I think it works at both ends of the funnel. You can promote them as a part of your program and use it to get more from other people. You can help them out. You can set it up for them and then show like, hey, people are engaging with your content, like social media profiles, right? People want to, like, that's me. I'm going to go claim my profile before anyone else does. I'm going to claim my username. It's going to be about me.
Yeah.
It's ego at the end of the day, and people engage with content that makes them feel better about themselves or aligns them with someone that they look up to.
I was just gonna say that gave me an idea, which is that, you can sort of gamify, you might gamify some of that as well, right? So you could have like, top contributor badges, things like that, that again are going to influence people to share. And they're also going to be, uh, generally those are going to be taken by people who are more active or have a bigger following or whatever, right? So they are more likely to be those sort of influential people, if you're
Yes,
giving
and to get them to fill out more information on there. So if them submitting more information to you means that they get more visibility. So we did have campaigns like, how many people view this pattern? How many people have downloaded it and made projects based on it? Suddenly you are sought after. So you have an incentive to figure out how to improve. On Etsy, the more you're found for your listing, the more you're going to make sales. So there's a built-in incentive to make it as good as possible to learn how to work the Etsy algorithm, right?
Right.
It's part and parcel. But gamification helps lots of things. So that was definitely a place we played. Hey, your profile is 78% complete. Yelp does that. Yelp, in filling out your business profile, did you do everything? It helps.
Samantha had a question about the incentivizing. So yeah, this is another place where I think a lot of people get sort of stuck, right? Is that they get interested in the idea of UGC, but maybe they don't have like a clear, like, oh, every time somebody signs up, we're gonna whatever. And so then they're like, okay, well, how do I get people to do this thing? To just take their time to send me information or fill out a form or a survey or whatever it is. And so Sam's question is about sort of that. That topic, and is there sort of a gray area or a line there in terms of like what's acceptable, or how do you entice people?
That a lot depends on, frankly, the legal expectations in your country. So I've seen instances where asking for a Google review based on your industry, maybe they expect you to pay users for that privilege, right? And that can vary from country to country and region to region. So that is something to look out for. Or Google, for example, doesn't want you to incentivize users because then they're doing it for the money instead of for, I don't know, the goodness of their heart or something. It might be against certain tools' terms of service if you're participating in those. So I do think there's things to watch out for. I think you need to think about what it makes. The other thing is just, will they expect it going forward? So if you're offering a gift card and to fill out this out, are they going to do it again in a month? So I prefer, frankly, incentives that are less monetary. I prefer a gamification approach. I prefer, maybe you incentivize for the first 100 pieces of content because it's worth it to just have a base to smart to go and promote. And maybe you don't publicize what that incentive is on a larger market so that you don't have the continuing expense ongoing. And I prefer to think about leveraging the ego, leveraging the small functionality like the bookmarking on Pinterest, to help avoid that gray area and help avoid the long-term costs of what that might be.
Yeah. I think that's super smart, and yeah, thinking a couple steps ahead there to say, okay, how can we if we are going to offer some kind of incentive, how can we make that like a one-time push to sort of start the process, start the machine, if you will, without having to offer that same incentive indefinitely.
Yep.
Very cool.
Or the incentive that we had for patterns was, we won't take a commission. Like, we're getting the email address. You pay your own fees for the credit card, but we won't take a cut, and we'll pay for the hosting.
Right.
That's a good trade-off. I wanted those email addresses from people that are good enough at crafting in a specific craft to download a pattern. And P.S. now I know what category they're interested in and that they're good enough to know how to do this. So suddenly I can market to them in meaningful ways. That's a big incentive for us to collect their information. But the person who made the pattern, it now has an incentive because they didn't have to pay the commission, and they're going to tell people about that, and they're going to love that, and then users are going to want to go there instead to buy so they can support their favorite pattern designer. There's a whole ecosystem around it, frankly.
That actually gives me another question, Tori. So you mentioned, we've talked a little bit about a couple different sort of channels that plug into the UGC strategy, right? So obviously we started the conversation talking about SEO and sort of the value of having all these pages that you potentially are being indexed. You've talked about email marketing as being another big opportunity here, right? You're collecting information. You can collect emails, or you have to collect emails in some cases. What are some of the other, sort of channels, or what are some of the other like things that you can sort of build on top of a UGC strategy that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious ones we leveraged the most were email and social media. But then obviously there's an overlap with influencer campaigns,
Mm.
partnerships, sales. I think we used those and the interest from users and the user base to help sell not just the partnerships, but also like, don't you want to work with us for future instructors?
Mm.
It's brand recognition and awareness. I think it helped us with affiliates too, because we had a reputation and people wanted to work with us. And if they were to write a post promoting our sale, they know we're loved. They know their users like us. They know they're going to get a commission, and they know they're going to look good for giving their users a special deal.
Right.
So it can help with recruiting good affiliates
Huh.
to your table. I mean, all of them is the short answer.
UGC makes the world go round.
It can, because it's users and you're serving your user.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And I think that there's another interesting sort of rabbit hole there that you touched on a little bit, which is like some of the proprietary kind of like data that you get to sort of start to collect, right? So, you mentioned like, okay, hey, people are uploading these certain types of templates. Maybe we should create some content there. Or, if your site has some kind of search or filter functionality, well, now all of a sudden you've got, again, like proprietary keyword research data on like what kind of patterns are people searching for that you might not be able to find in Ahrefs or SEMrush or some other tool. So I think
Yep.
that's all super interesting as well. When you really start to think about how does this feed into all these other things that we're doing, and it becomes really its own process.
Through the searches on your site, and also frankly in GSC, because man, people look for some weird patterns and they found them on our site, and it was wild, some of the things. I never would have thought of that, and never would have wanted to associate that with my brand, but okay, it's making those users happy, and we'll just let them do what they want in their little corner.
So, sometimes you find out useful things that you didn't want to know.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Tori, we are just about out of time, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time here and wrap up at the end of the hour. But I just want to take a moment and say, first of all, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us today. This was super awesome, and I think very mind opening in terms of the different ways that UGC works and how what actually is UGC, right? I think as you so eloquently displayed, right, it is way more things than what we just think about. So thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. It was a super lot of fun. Tofu is a wonderful community, so I encourage everyone to join and participate and come hang out with us there.
Indeed. Yeah. And thanks all for joining us today. As Tori just mentioned, if you have not already, join us inside Top of the Funnel, yesoptimist.com/tofu. Would love to see you there. All right. Well, thank you again. Hope you have a great rest of your day, Tori, and all who joined us. And we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Cheers.